How Rebel Moon Part 1: A Child of Fire was filmed. With the green screen background and millions of dollars. After all, it's Snyder. Now, let's wait for the 153-hour director's cut. The film could have been part of the Star Wars universe, but it has marked the beginning of a new ambitious franchise, a dream project of the director since the 90s, and one of the most expensive projects in Netflix's history. When you think about it, it's better than becoming the third spin-off of the 10th prequel about a galaxy far, far away. Well, you get it. Movies Inside Out presents Rebel Moon Part 1: A Child of Fire is Zack Snyder's epic space opera about rebels fighting a cruel empire, which disappointed critics but impressed the director's devoted fans. In this video, we'll tell you about the strengths and weaknesses of the film, as well as why it is divided into two parts, which films inspired it, and which role could have been played by Jason Statham. Well, let's get started. The creation story. The idea of Rebel Moon came to director Zack Snyder back in the 1990s, while he was in college, and in 1997, he discussed it with Kurt Johnstad, the future screenwriter of this movie and Snyder's other film, 300. However, at that time, the budding filmmakers had no opportunity to put the project in motion, so they decided to get back to it when they had better chances. In 2012, Zack Snyder offered his script to Lucasfilm as a prequel to Star Wars, but they rejected the director's idea. Snyder didn't give up and later pitched his idea to Warner Bros. Pictures for both a video game and a film, but he had no luck there either. Then Snyder decided to rework his script and create the setting outside the Star Wars universe. Together with producer Eric Newman, they wanted to create an original series, but after a while, they offered it to Netflix as a feature film. Netflix's executive team was interested in the project, but board chairman Scott Stuber was concerned about the potential failure in the film due to its excessive length. Snyder wasn't ready to let go of any of the characters or plot lines, so he decided to split the film into two parts. By the way, Denis Villeneuve followed the same principle when shooting Dune. Have you watched our video about the creation of the first part of this atmospheric story yet? If not, we suggest giving it a watch as soon as you can. The start of the production of Rebel Moon was announced in the summer of 2021. Meanwhile, Snyder himself, Shay Hatton, and Kurt Johnstad were working on the new script. The exciting soundtrack was created by Tom Holkenborg, known as Junkie XL, who had previously worked with Snyder on 3 films. According to the director, Rebel Moon was inspired by the works of Akira Kurosawa, especially the film Seven Samurai, the Star Wars franchise, as well as the films The Magnificent Seven and Ultramarines. By the way, from the latter movie, the director borrowed Latin names for imperial institutions, weapon and vehicle designs, as well as quasi-religious elements. Also, the film's logo is a direct reference to the logo of the heavy metal science fiction magazine. Did someone say heavy metal? Casting. In November 2021, actress Sofia Boutella joined the project as the leading actress. From the very beginning, Snyder already knew he would invite Boutella to be part of the film, as she had previously impressed him with her performance and charisma. Charlie Hunnam was initially considered for a different role in the film, but the actor really liked Kai and proposed to play this role. To Hunnam's surprise, Snyder quickly agreed and gave him his favorite character. The warrior Tarak was played by the budding British actor of Indian and Russian descent, Stas Nair. In one interview, he mentioned that he managed to add some personal details to his character. The language his character speaks is a mixture of 2 languages, Russian, one of the actor's native languages, and Portuguese, which he studies. Rupert Friend was originally invited to play Belisarius, but he declined due to his busy schedule filming the short film Swan, and in the end, the role went to Irish actor Frofi. Like Stas Nair, he was lucky to bring something personal to his character, as the director encouraged him to use his native accent, which he rarely gets to do on screen. By the way, the film became the 3rd collaboration between Zack Snyder and Jenna Malone, who played the spider-like creature Armada. Previously, the actress could be seen in the films Sucker Punch and Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. By the way, Ed Skrein, who played Admiral Atticus Noble, and Mikhail Hausman, who played Gunnar, shared the role of Dario Naharis in the series Game of Thrones. Skrein played him in Season 3, while Hausman took it over in Seasons 4 through 6. By the way, Jason Statham could have played Admiral Noble. Also, Gal Gadot could have appeared in the film, but the supposed role for her is unknown. Several actors were considered for the role of the robot Jimmy, including Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Liam Neeson, Morgan Freeman, and Anthony Daniels, but in June 2022, the role went to Anthony Hopkins. According to Snyder, Jimmy is in many ways the center of the film and seems more human than humans. Hopkins recorded all his lines in advance before the start of filming to make the job easier for the other actors and recorded the final version during post-production. The filming process. Rebel Moon entered production on April 19, 2022, and on the same day, Snyder shared the first photos from the set. By the way, the director also worked as the cinematographer of the film. However, before the filming began, all the actors spent 2 months engaging in workouts in the gym right on the set, which not only improved their shape, but also truly bonded the team. In fact, Snyder organizes such workouts during the production of all his films. Zack Snyder's Fitness Club franchise invites promising actors to engage in workouts. Batman and Flash are already training with us. Have you seen Superman's biceps? We made them like that. The subscription cost will be deducted from the paycheck. The film was shot at several locations near Los Angeles, including the Blue Cloud Ranch, where the veldt sets with real wheat crops were built outdoors over about 4 months. Sofia Boutella once shared that at the beginning of the production, she would ride an electric bicycle around the ranch area, where there were several sets. Seeing the veldt sets, she was fascinated by their scale, and a moment later, she realized that they were created specifically for their film. During the scene where the Imperial ships land on the veldt, the crew planned to create a dust cloud from the powerful engines using giant fans. However, they turned out not powerful enough, so Snyder asked helicopter pilots to fly low right above the actors' heads, blowing them with a stream of dusty air. Most of the scenes were shot with blue and green screens, and in the scene where Tarak tames the Griffin, a huge green model of the bird's head was used, controlled by a stuntman standing on a boom crane, which came to life during post-production. A stuntman in a blue suit and custom-made armor also acted as the robot, and during post-production, specialists changed some of his body parts using visual effects. Scenes with Armada were shot using a special green lifting device, which was moved by technicians in green suits. During the post-production, the complex structure was replaced with creepy spider legs created using computer graphics. The final battle between Korra and Noble required serious and careful work from stunt coordinators. The large-scale scene was shot in a studio completely covered with a green background. By the way, Sofia Boutella devoted many years to choreography and artistic gymnastics, and these skills significantly helped her during the fight scenes. The movie wrapped filming on December 2, 2022, after 152 shooting days. On August 20, 2023, the creators announced the titles of the 2 parts of the film, A Child of Fire and The Scargiver. Several major studios, including Scanline VFX and Rodeo FX, worked on the CGI, creating about 1,400 frames with visual effects for the film. By the way, Rebel Moon is Zack Snyder's second entirely digital film after the 2021 Army of the Dead. The director's other works were shot on 35mm or 65mm film. Probably the transition to digital technology is related to the collaboration with Netflix. According to its rules, all films must be delivered in UHD format. Before leaving Warner Bros. For Netflix, Zack Snyder was developing a sequel to 300, titled Blood and Ashes, which told the story of the relationship between Alexander the Great and his second-in-command general, Hephaestion. But the film never went to production. Eventually, the director decided to incorporate some elements of its plot into Rebel Moon. For example, the scene where Alexander had to saddle his beloved horse, Bucephalus, served as the basis for the scene with Turok and the Griffin. Movie mistakes and errors. Since Zack Snyder is famous for his special attention to the visual rather than the thematic and narrative elements of his films, it's not surprising that Rebel Moon has many mistakes, controversial moments, and quite a few significant plot holes. Let's have a look at some of them. But first, pause the video and write in the comments section what you think is the most significant mistake in the film. Well, let's get started. At the beginning of the film, we meet Sindri, the leader of the Nordic village on the planet Veldt, supporting the growing revolution against the Motherworld. However, it's curious that when Admiral Noble arrives in the village, Sindri very easily gets cornered. He refuses to make a deal to sell surplus grain and immediately gets killed by Noble because of it. Yes, he would have been killed anyway, but the instant refusal is too foolish and unreasonable. Perhaps Sindri should have agreed to the Admiral's terms and started playing a double game. This way, he would have been more likely to help his people.
With that windfall, you'll be able to buy plenty of harvesters, robots, and won't have to do this difficult work by hand.
Then, Korra, having dealt with the Imperial soldiers, sets off on a journey to gather warriors from across the galaxy for further resistance against Motherworld forces. Soon, along with her friend Gunner, she finds herself in the city of Providence and witnesses bounty hunters arresting Gunner's associate in a local bar. After that, Korra and Gunner enter the bar themselves, and Korra announces her rebellion against the Empire to all the visitors, which is amazingly careless. What if there were Noble's minions among these people? But Korra's careless decisions don't end there. In the bar, she meets a mercenary and smuggler named Kai, who offers his ship to help her cause. Korra, of course, almost without hesitation agrees, although she has no reason to trust this man. Moreover, at first, he explains that he works with bounty hunters only for the money, but when Korra says that they won't be able to pay much, he pretends not to care. He's obviously hiding something. Then Kai suggests to Korra and Gunner to go find one of the distant planets to find Turok, his warrior acquaintance, who might be able to help them, and Korra immediately agrees to this dubious journey, although it was not part of her original plan. When they find Turok, it turns out that he is working off a debt in slavery. Then we see an amazingly illogical series of events. The man Turok works for demands a huge sum from him.
300,000 dirhams ought to cover any inconvenience I've suffered.
But Korra explains that it's impossible, so he suggests buying the slave's freedom on a bet. If Turok manages to tame a wild griffin, he will release him. But if not, Korra, Gunner, and Kai will become slaves as well. It's simply unimaginable how Korra could so easily risk her life and freedom, believing the words of almost a stranger like Kai that Turok is a great warrior. But what if he failed? Then, the heroes continue to gather a team of warriors, and they are joined by Titus, Nemesis, and half of the Blood Axes. Later, it turns out that Kai has gained Korra's trust to collect the reward for the rebels' heads. But it was Kai who helped Korra find all the elite fighters and knew where they were. So why would he have to work undercover when he could simply hand over the location of the warriors to the Motherworld elite and get his reward? It's also quite strange that humans are the dominant race throughout the galaxy. It's logical to assume that if the humans from the Motherworld want to conquer other planets, representatives of other races would rebel against them. However, the main opponents of Motherworld forces are also humans. It seems like the creators just chose an easy way out, avoiding the development of full-fledged alien worlds. The scale of the wars waged by the Motherworld is also unclear. At the beginning of the film, we learn that the Galactic Wars began since the Motherworld was drained of natural resources and its government started stealing from others. But how could a planet with resource depletion wage war in countless worlds for years without losing once? Moreover, it seems that the Motherworld doesn't gain any more resources, and in that case, conquering planets seems pointless. When Kai lures the team into a trap, he lets Gunner go for some reason and gives him a weapon so he can personally kill everyone. And for some reason, the fact that instead he decides to free his comrades surprises Noble a lot. It seems like Kai's illogical action was put here only to lead to the final battle.
All you have to do is pull the trigger.
Okay.
Darian's fate raises questions as well. The character was the last to join the team and immediately sparked interest, but the director decided to kill him in the final battle. Moreover, his death is absolutely meaningless, as the viewer doesn't even get to know him enough to feel something because of his sacrifice, which is, by the way, also unnecessary. He could have survived if he had used firearms. Korra, by the way, decides to fight Noble barehanded. And now, let's mention a few less significant, but no less strange moments of the film. For example, at the beginning of the film, we see a huge planet next to Velt that looks like Saturn. But if it were really located so close, life on Velt would be impossible. The moment where Korra sets the flag on the hill was obviously designed for a beautiful frame, so during the heat of the battle, she would become the perfect target and would have been shot immediately. You can also notice that Korra plows the land incorrectly. Instead of simply walking behind the plow, she is supposed to make some effort. In that case, Korra would hardly have been able to plow such a huge field alone. Then we can see an interesting hut where there is both an electric-powered door and electricity, but for heating they use a stove. But why heat the house in the first place when it's summer outside? Then Admiral Noble arrives on Veld looking exactly like a Wehrmacht officer, apparently to make the audience immediately understand that he is the villain. Later, Noble demands that the villagers prepare 10,000 bushels for his ship. However, 1 bushel equals 60 pounds, and a few dozen people obviously can't harvest around 600,000 pounds in 2 months from the field, which Korra was able to plow in 1 night. During the scuffle between the Imperial soldiers in the barracks, it seems that nobody expected Korra to appear, but normally there should have been a sentry near the entrance who wouldn't allow uninvited guests to enter. It's also surprising that Korra hides from blasters behind a wooden table, which wouldn't help her at all, and the girl who managed to escape from Harmada doesn't try to return to her mother, and her mother, for some reason, doesn't rush to save her daughter. In the final battle, for some reason, Harmada raises Nemesis with swords in her hands in front of her, allowing her to easily kill herself. At the end of the film, we see Nemesis attacking one of the enemies from behind and piercing his chest with the sword. But this way, she would pierce herself as well, as the sword is rather long. Then Darien is freed from his shackles and we immediately see him with a weapon in his hands. Seems like the opponents left the weapon with him for some reason. Moreover, in Rebel Moon, you can also notice a couple of classic movie mistakes. For example, the shape of the platform of Gondival changes depending on the angle. During the overhead shots, it's octagonal, but in all shots from below, it's hexagonal. Also, during the final battle with Noble, Korra knocks out several of his teeth, but after the Admiral is brought back to life, all his teeth are intact. Or is it really a mistake? Perhaps Mr. Noble could have had dental treatment in your dental clinic. Deleted scenes and bloopers. Zack Snyder plans to release an extended version of the film, the so-called Snyder Cut. In this R-rated movie, we'll see about an hour of deleted scenes and also meet characters who, for some reason, didn't make it into the main version, which, by the way, was rated PG-13, allowing teenagers to watch the film. The Snyder Cuts of both parts of Rebel Moon are set to be released in the summer of 2024. The director said that he would really like the audience to watch all 6 hours of the space opera in one go. So we'll have to wait for the additional materials, but what we can do now is enjoy some funny moments that happened during the filming of the first part. By the way, the actors admitted that despite physical fatigue, working with Zack Snyder filled them with energy and enthusiasm, and you can actually see the actors' good mood behind the scenes. Worldwide recognition. On December 15, 2023, the film Rebel Moon Part 1: A Child of Fire had a limited release in Los Angeles, New York, Toronto, and London. And on December 22nd, the film was released on Netflix. It was well received by audiences and became one of the most popular films on the platform in the first week after the release. The film's budget, including marketing expenses, was $90 million, making it Netflix's most expensive project in 2023. Moreover, the company allocated $166 million for the production of both parts. According to Snyder, he would like Rebel Moon to become a large media franchise. After the premiere, we saw the release of a prequel graphic novel about Darien and Devra, a novelization, and various action figures. Soon, we'll see an animated short film, 2 art books, and mobile and board games. Netflix does not disclose official information about actors' paychecks. However, according to rumors, Sofia Boutella earned $600,000, Jaimon Hansu got $500,000, Charlie Hunnam got $400,000, Mikhail Husman got $250,000, and supporting actors received from $60,000 to $200,000. The film received mostly negative reviews from critics who criticized it for its weak plot consisting of science fiction cliches, which can't be saved by its high-quality visual component, as well as poorly developed characters and excessive imitation of more sophisticated space operas. The film also cannot boast of numerous nominations for prestigious film awards. It won an award for Best Costumes and was nominated for Best Science Fiction Film at Costume Designers Guild Awards. The film also received a nomination for Best Special Makeup Effects at the Hollywood Makeup Artist and Hairstylist Guild Awards. In addition, it was shortlisted for the Oscars, but unfortunately did not make it to the list of nominees. Despite the unfavorable reception from experts, Rebel Moon Part 2: The Scargiver is set to be released on April 19, 2024. Since it was known from the very beginning that the space opera would be divided into 2 parts, and the production of the second part did not depend on the success of the first, the films were shot one after another. Moreover, it is known that Snyder is already working on the third film. However, his exact plans regarding the franchise are unclear. In one interview, the director stated that a trilogy is planned, while in another, he said that it would be a trilogy of sequels after the first movie, implying 4 or 5 films in total. Are you looking forward to the release of the new Rebel Moon movies?